The moment I pushed open the glass door of the beach house, the house I had spent years saving for, the house I bought specifically to give my parents the kind of peaceful retirement they always dreamed of, I froze. My sister was standing right there in the living room, barefoot, hair tied up in a messy bun, and holding a box labeled, bedroom stuff. She wasn't visiting. That much was obvious. She was moving into the house I gifted to my parents. A house she didn't pay for. A house she didn't even know existed until yesterday. And the worst part, she looked at me like I was the one intruding. Before I could stop myself, the words slipped out of my mouth. "What the hell are you doing here?" She just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad said I could have the master bedroom." The master bedroom, the one with the ocean-facing balcony, the one I had imagined my parents relaxing in during sunsets. I felt my throat tighten with anger, confusion, disbelief, everything all at once. And in that moment, standing in the middle of what was supposed to be a surprise gift, I wondered if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. So tell me, before I go deeper into this whole mess, was I wrong for what I did next? Would you have reacted differently if you walked into a house you bought for your parents and found your freeloading sister already claiming the best room? Let me take you back to the beginning, because none of this will make sense unless you understand the history between me, my parents, and especially my younger sister, Alina. I'm the oldest child, and I grew up with the kind of upbringing most people would call traditional. But I'd call it unbalanced. My parents weren't bad people. They were just incredibly forgiving, selectively forgiving. When I messed up, it was a life lesson. When my sister messed up, it was everyone makes mistakes. When I got a bad grade, it was a crisis. When my sister failed an entire semester, they gifted her a new phone to cheer her up. It was always like that, me being held to impossible standards and her being wrapped in soft cotton layers of excuses and sympathy. I didn't hate her. I just resented how easy she had it. Growing up, I learned to be responsible almost too early. By the time I was 16, I was working part-time after school. By 18, I was paying my own college application fees. By 19, I was covering small bills at home because my parents were going through a financially tight period. I did it willingly. I believed that helping my family was something honorable, something meaningful. But even then, the imbalance was there. My sister never worked a single day in high school. She spent her days hanging out with friends, going to events, traveling on money she sometimes didn't even ask permission to spend. Somehow, there was always a cushion under her. And when I complained, my parents gave me the same line every time. "She's still young. Let her enjoy her life." Meanwhile, I was barely keeping myself afloat. Fast forward a few years, I graduated, got my first real job, and for the first time in my life I was earning enough to imagine doing something big. I had always wanted to give back to my parents. They sacrificed a lot when we were younger, even if the distribution wasn't always fair. And the one thing they always talked about was how much they loved the ocean, how they dreamed of having a place near the beach where they could spend weekends, maybe eventually retire. I made it my mission. I worked overtime for months. I saved aggressively. I skipped outings, vacations, new clothes, everything. Every dollar I didn't need went straight into the beach house fund. I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends. It was personal. It was a dream I wanted to make real all by myself. Meanwhile, my sister's life went on in its typical chaotic fashion. She dropped out of her second college major, got into a messy relationship, moved back home twice, borrowed money from the family without paying it back. And every time something happened, my parents would protect her from accountability. I was used to it by this point. I kept my distance from her drama and focused on my work. But a part of me kept wishing she'd grow up someday. Spoiler alert, she didn't. When I finally found the perfect house, it felt like fate. A small but beautiful beachfront property about an hour and a half from the city. The moment I stepped inside, the energy felt warm, inviting, peaceful, the kind of place where my parents could breathe easily for the first time in years. The price was high, way higher than anything I had ever handled before, but I had saved enough for the down payment and secured the rest with a loan. The real estate agent asked me, "Are you sure you want to take this on a loan?" I remember answering with full confidence, "Absolutely." Because to me this wasn't a purchase. It was a thank you letter written in concrete, glass, and ocean breeze. The plan was simple. I would get the house fully furnished, fix a few minor repairs, decorate it with things my parents loved, and then surprise them with the keys. I had imagined the scene 1,000 times in my head. My mom crying, my dad speechless, my sister maybe clapping awkwardly in the corner. But what happened was the complete opposite. I had told my parents that I wanted them to keep the weekend free because I had a small surprise. I didn't tell them what it was. I wanted the reveal to be perfect. The night before the surprise, I drove to the house one last time to check on everything. I had bought fresh flowers, new towels, groceries for the fridge, everything to make it feel like a home. I had playlists ready, candles ready, and I even printed a small framed message that said, "For the best parents in the world, your new home by the sea." I left it on the kitchen island. I didn't sleep that night. I was too excited, too nervous, too ready to see years of hard work finally bring happiness to the two people who raised me. If only I had known what was coming. The next morning, my parents told me they would meet me at the beach house around noon. I drove separately because I wanted to get there early and make sure everything was set. But when I arrived, something felt off. The front gate was open. The living room lights were on. There were multiple pairs of shoes scattered near the entrance. At first I thought maybe my parents had come early, but when I stepped inside it was her, my sister, with her boxes, her bags, her clothes draped over the armchair, her suitcase half open on the floor, and she was acting like she owned the place. I asked her again what she was doing there, and she rolled her eyes as if my confusion annoyed her. "Mom and Dad told me you bought a beach house," she said casually. "So they told me I could move in early and get settled. They said they'll come on weekends, but I need a place to live for a while, so this works out perfectly." Before I could process that, she added, "I hope you don't mind that I'm taking the master bedroom. The waves look so pretty from the balcony." I felt my heartbeat in my ears. My own parents told her she could move in. And not just move in, claim the house. The master bedroom. Before they had even stepped foot inside themselves. I took a deep breath, trying to not explode immediately. I told her as calmly as I could, this house was meant for Mom and Dad. It's their retirement home, not your personal apartment. She shrugged again, the way only someone who's never truly faced consequences can. "Well, they said it's fine. They said you should have told us earlier. And I need a place, so." I cut her off. "Where are Mom and Dad?" She shrugged again. "On their way, they'll explain." That was the moment I realized something was terribly wrong. When my parents arrived, they walked in smiling, like nothing was out of the ordinary. My mom hugged me, thanked me for the surprise, looked around admiringly, and then immediately started talking about how perfect the house would be. For all three of us. When I asked what she meant, she gestured toward my sister like it was obvious. "Well, Alina needs a stable place for a while, and this house is too far from the city for us to live in full time. She'll stay here and take care of the place. We'll come visit on weekends." I felt something inside me crack open. I had spent years sacrificing to buy a home specifically for them. And the first thing they did was hand it over to the one person who had never lifted a finger to help anyone. I told them clearly that this house was meant for TM, that I bought it as a GFT, not as a free living arrangement for my sister. My dad sighed the way he always does when he thinks I'm being too dramatic. He said, "You know your sister is going through a tough time right now. Let her have this. You've already done the hard work. Don't make things complicated." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them and ask why they always did this, why my efforts were always just expected, while my sister's needs were always prioritized. My sister stood behind them with that smug smile she gets whenever she wins by simply being the favorite. I swear, in that moment, I felt decades of suppressed emotions crawl up my throat. The anger, the disappointment, the exhaustion, they all mixed into something explosive. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to pause for a second. Because here's where the real dilemma kicked in for me. I was standing there in the middle of the home I bought with my own money, listening to my parents tell me that the house was now essentially my sister's. I had a choice, a big one. And I want to know, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have let it slide to keep the peace, or would you have taken the house back immediately? Before I reveal what I decided, take a moment and comment below. Honestly, I want to hear your thoughts, because this next part changed everything when I asked you what you would have done in my place. I wasn't exaggerating, because in that moment, standing there inside the beach house I worked years to afford, I genuinely didn't know what was the right thing anymore. My parents were staring at me with that familiar mixture of expectation and passive disappointment, and my sister was hovering behind them like a smug shadow ready to take anything that wasn't nailed to the floor. I felt backed into a corner. My stomach twisted with a kind of betrayal I didn't have words for. You know that feeling when you suddenly realize the people you trust the most have been taking advantage of your love without even realizing it. It hits like cold water down your spine. My mom stepped closer and placed her hand on my arm, like she was trying to soothe a child mid-tantrum. "You should have told us your plans earlier," she said softly. "Then we could have discussed things as a family." I stared at her shocked. This was supposed to be a gift, a surprise, a moment of happiness. When people buy their parents a car or a house or a vacation, they don't hand them a proposal first. I explained again that I wanted this to be something special, that I imagined them walking in for the first time without knowing anything beforehand. That this wasn't a decision meant for negotiation. It was something I did alone and lovingly. My dad sighed and rubbed his forehead. "We appreciate it," he said, but he said it in that tone that didn't sound like appreciation at all. "But your sister is going through a hard stage in life, and she needs support. This is the perfect environment for her to reset." Behind him, my sister had the nerve to nod, like she agreed with the logic of using my house as her fresh start. She even added, "I'll take care of the place. You don't need to worry." As if a house was some pet she'd feed occasionally, the anger was becoming almost physical. I felt like I was vibrating. I told them clearly, again, that this house wasn't some family property open for interpretation. It was a gift I chose specifically for them. Not a community shelter, not a rehab center, not a dumping ground for my sister's failures. My mother's expression changed. It hardened in that subtle way only mothers can manage, soft voice, firm eyes. "Don't be selfish," she said quietly. "You've always been the stable one. You're responsible. You can handle things better than she can. Let her stay until she gets her life together." And there it was. The sentence that defined my entire childhood, teenage years, and adulthood in one breath. "You're responsible." Translation: "We expect things from you because you make it easy. She's fragile, so we sacrifice your needs for hers." I looked at my sister. Her eyes darted away, like she knew deep down this wasn't fair but refused to admit it. And that's when I realized something painful. She wasn't the real problem. My parents were. They created this imbalance. They fed it, nurtured it, excused it, justified it. And now it had grown into something strong enough to swallow something as huge as a house. So I stepped back, inhaled deeply, and said the words that changed everything. "No. She's not living here." The room went dead silent. My sister's face snapped toward me like she couldn't believe it. My mom blinked. My dad frowned. I continued. "This house is yours. I bought it for you. If you don't want it, that's fine. But she's not living here." My sister immediately jumped in with her signature dramatic voice. "You can't kick me out." "It's not even your house anymore if you give it to them." My dad held up his hand toward her but didn't turn to look at her. He stepped closer to me and lowered his voice. "Son," he said, "don't make this ugly. Your mother and I already agreed that it would be nice for all of us to have a place to share." "I didn't buy a share house," I snapped. "I bought this for you, not for her." My mother shook her head. "She's family too." And that was the moment I realized just how invisible my sacrifices had been to them. They didn't ask how much I saved, how many nights I stayed up, how many things I gave up, how heavy the loan was. They only saw something they could distribute however they wanted. My blood was boiling. I told them, "If she stays, the house goes back to me. Completely. I'll take it off the table." My dad's eyes widened. "You can't take back a gift." "Watch me," I replied. My sister tried to argue again, but I ignored her. I told them I wanted a final answer right then. My parents exchanged a look, the kind of silent conversation married couples have when they're trying to decide how to handle something. After almost 10 seconds, my mom sighed. "It's unfair for her to be homeless." "She's not homeless," I snapped. "She's irresponsible. That's a choice, not a condition." My sister gasped dramatically. My dad took a deep breath. "We want her to stay," he said. "At least for a while." That was it. That was the confirmation. They chose her. Again, so I nodded once, calmly, surprisingly calmly, and said, "Okay." "Then the house is no longer yours." My mom's face twisted. "What does that mean?" I stepped back and pointed toward the door. "It means all of you need to leave. Now." My sister laughed like she thought I was bluffing. "You're joking?" "No," I said. "Get out." My mother tried to guilt-trip me immediately. "How can you be so cruel? We are your family?" "Exactly," I said. "And I bought this house for my family. But you want to give it to someone who hasn't earned anything. So no. This house is mine again." My dad tried to reason, but I wasn't listening anymore. Something inside me had snapped. Something that had been stretched thin for years finally broke. My sister tried to stand her ground, saying, "I'm not leaving. I've already brought my stuff." I stepped toward her and said, "Then I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing. I have the deed. I have the purchase documents. I have the keys. Your stuff being here means nothing." She stared at me speechless. That had never happened before. My mother's eyes widened like I had suddenly become a stranger to her. she whispered. You wouldn't do that. Try me, I replied. My dad finally placed his hand on my mom's shoulder and said, Let's go. My sister protested, whined, argued, yelled, but he ushered her toward the door. My mother gave me a look I'll never forget, half fury, half heartbreak, like I had just betrayed them. They stepped out onto the front porch. My sister was crying dramatically. Not real sadness, more like wounded entitlement. I followed them outside, locked the door behind me, and stood there staring at the 3 people I had done all of this for. My mom said, You've changed. I shook my head. No. I just finally stopped sacrificing everything for someone who never gives anything back. My dad tried one last time. We can talk about this later. Don't make permanent decisions based on emotions. I replied, This isn't emotional, this is correction. A very late one. Then I turned, walked back inside, and shut the door. I could hear my sister pounding on it from the outside, yelling things I didn't even process because I was too busy breathing long, deep, shaky breaths. The house was quiet. Silent. Peaceful in the saddest possible way. I sat down on the couch and stared at the waves through the window. This was supposed to be a happy day. Instead, it felt like mourning something I didn't even realize I had lost years ago. I stayed in the house that night. I ordered food, walked on the beach, tried to make sense of everything that had just happened. That's when my phone started blowing up. First it was texts from my sister, long paragraphs accusing me of being evil, selfish, jealous. Heartless, she said I abandoned her when she needed family the most. Then messages from my parents. My mom wrote that she was disappointed and hurt. My dad wrote that he needed time to process my reaction, not their decision, my reaction. Then messages from relatives started coming in. My sister had already told everyone her own edited version of the story, that I kicked her out of her parents' house and abandoned them at the beach. Not a single person knew the house was bought by me, using my money. Not a single person knew they wanted to push her in as some permanent resident before even appreciating the gift. They called me ungrateful, dramatic, even abusive. I ignored every message, every call, every accusation. The next morning my dad arrived at the house alone. He knocked. I let him in. He looked tired, older than usual, like the emotional weight of the situation had settled on his shoulders overnight. He didn't yell. He didn't guilt-trip me. He just sat on the couch, looked around the house slowly, and finally asked, Why didn't you tell us you were buying it? I answered honestly, Because I wanted you to enjoy it, not judge it, not compare it, not make it complicated, and definitely not hand it over to her before even stepping foot inside. He nodded slowly, like he understood, but didn't want to admit it. After a long silence, he said, Your mother thinks you acted out of anger. I shook my head. I acted out of exhaustion. Years of exhaustion. He didn't argue. Then he said something that surprised me. You're right about her. We haven't handled things well. I didn't speak. I just let him continue. We always saw you as strong, he said, and we treated you like you didn't need help. And we let her take advantage of that. Hearing him admit that hurt in a way I didn't expect. It's one thing to assume your parents know what they're doing. It's another to realize they always knew but chose not to change. He continued, Your mother is upset. But she'll calm down. Give her some time. I nodded, unsure. Then he asked the big question. What do you want to do with the house now? I didn't know. Part of me wanted to keep it as my own getaway spot. Part of me wanted to sell it. Part of me still wanted my parents to have it. But I knew one thing for sure, my sister was never stepping foot in it again. I told him I needed time. Real time. He accepted that. Before leaving, he paused at the doorway and said, I'm proud of you, you know. Even if we don't say it. For some reason, that hit me harder than everything else. After he left, I sat alone again, replaying everything. I knew relationships were cracked now, maybe permanently. But I also knew something else. This was the first time I had chosen myself. And maybe that wasn't selfish. Maybe it was necessary. So, what happened afterward? Well, things didn't magically repair overnight. My mom didn't speak to me for weeks. My sister blocked me everywhere and continued playing victim to the extended family. But my dad kept in touch, quietly, calmly, slowly. Eventually he admitted something I never thought I'd hear. He said I should keep the house. That they didn't deserve it, not yet. That until they learned to respect the difference between love and entitlement. Giving them something so big would only repeat the same cycle. And for the first time in my life, I realized he wasn't just defending my sister out of habit. He genuinely wanted to fix things. So I kept the house. For now, I still go there on weekends. Alone, I walk on the sand, breathe the ocean air, and try to untangle the complicated knots of family loyalty, sacrifice, and boundaries. Sometimes I cry there. Sometimes I laugh. Sometimes I sit and listen to the waves and wonder if I made the right call. So let me ask you now, after hearing everything, start to finish, was I wrong for what I did? Was taking the house back too harsh, or was it the first time I finally stood up for myself? Before I end this, let me say this. If you were on my side, like this video. If you think I should have handled it differently, comment below and tell me how. And if you want more stories like this, messy, emotional, real, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you all in the next story.